What you most want is what you most can't have. And what you most can't have is what you already had and lost. Odysseus won the war, and that should have been the end of the story. After 10 years of fighting at Troy, the Greek king finally turned his ship towards Ithaca, towards his wife, his son, his throne, and his home. But the journey that should have ended the story became the story. It took him another 10 years to finally return back home. And along the way, he lost his ships, he lost his men who sailed with him. He was tempted, delayed, shipwrecked, and repeatedly pushed further away from the place he was trying to reach. Now, Odysseus had already conquered Troy. The difficult part now was trying to find his way home. And more than 2,000 years later, football told a strangely similar story about another man. A man who saw heights and depths and took him a long time to finally return home. And that man's name was Ronaldinho. Now, before Ronaldinho became a warning about wasted potential, he was joy. At the 2002 World Cup, he announced himself to the world as part of Brazil's devastating attack along with Ronaldo and Rivaldo. He helped create the equalizer against England, then scored the free kick that sent Brazil towards their 5th World Cup. He was only 22 years old at the time, and a year later, Barcelona brought him to Spain. Within a few seasons, Ronaldinho had almost everything a footballer could ask for. 2 league titles, a Champions League, back-to-back FIFA World Player of the Year awards, and the 2005 Ballon d'Or. And perhaps the rarest achievement of them all, in 2005, Real Madrid supporters stood and applauded a Barcelona player after Ronaldinho tore their team apart at the Santiago Bernabeu. And for a brief period, he was a footballer the world wanted to watch. By 2006, Ronaldinho had won the war. The World Cup was already in his cabinet. Europe had already been conquered. The individual trophies had arrived. If his career were a film, it could almost roll the credits right there and then. But Odysseus teaches us something about endings, that sometimes winning the war is where the true journey actually begins. Now, Ronaldinho's peak didn't disappear in one dramatic moment. Instead, it faded. His final years at Barcelona were incredibly disturbed by injury. His last league season there, injury and fitness problems limited him to only 13 starts, and by 2008, Barcelona moved on and Ronaldinho joined AC Milan. It represented something bigger. The centre of football was beginning to move on without him. A young Lionel Messi became Barcelona's future, and Cristiano Ronaldo became Manchester United's superstar. The next age of football was arriving. Ronaldinho was still only 28 years old. He was still capable of beautiful things in Milan, but was no longer the centre of the story. And maybe that's the strangest part of the decline. Not when you become bad, but when the world simply begins to look elsewhere. Ronaldinho had left Troy, and now came the wandering. Now, Odysseus spends much of the Odyssey moving from one strange place to another, and every time home seems close, something sends him further away. Now, Ronaldinho's journey is less mythical, but the rhythms were very familiar. 3 years in Milan, and then in 2011 back across the Atlantic to Flamengo. Ronaldinho was playing club football in Brazil again. But returning to your country is not necessarily the same as returning to your home. There were flashes, there were goals, there were trophies, but the feeling of Ronaldinho at the centre of football had long gone. And by the middle of 2012, he was 32 years old, and the criticism surrounding his career had become so much louder than the belief in what might still be left. Then Atlético Mineiro called, and Ronaldinho said something very revealing when he arrived. He spoke about the criticism and wanted to turn things around and be motivated to prove something again that matters. Because for the first time in years, Ronaldinho was not trying to return to Barcelona. He was not trying to become the best player in the world again. He was trying to become useful to a team that believed in him. And maybe that's the first sign that he was finally getting closer to his home. But the Odyssey does not allow Odysseus to simply sail into Ithaca. The closer he gets, the harder the journey seems to become. Now, Atlético Mineiro's 2013 Copa Libertadores campaign felt almost designed the same kind of way. They dominated the group stages, but then came the chaos. In the quarterfinals against Tijuana, Atlético were 2 goals down in Mexico before fighting back to draw the game 2-2. In the second leg, the tie was level late in stoppage time when Tijuana won a penalty. One kick could send Ronaldinho and Atlético Mineiro out, but then Victor saved it, and they survived. Then came Newell's Old Boys. Atletico lost the first leg of the semi-finals 2-0 in Argentina. Now back to the Belo Horizonte, Ronaldinho slipped a pass through to Bernard, who scored an early goal. But Atletico still needed another goal. It came deep in stoppage time, 2-0, penalties. Ronaldinho scored his, Victor saved the decisive penalty, and they survived once again. And then came the final. Olimpia beat Atletico 2-0 in Paraguay, and for the third consecutive round, Ronaldinho's team found itself staring at elimination. And for the third consecutive round, they came back. Joe scored seconds into the second half, and Leonardo Silva made it 2-0 near the end. Extra time and penalties. And when Olimpia's final kick struck the crossbar, Atlético Mineiro were champions of South America for the very first time. Ronaldinho had won the Copa Libertadores, and 7 years after lifting Champions League trophy, the man who once conquered world football had won another continent. Not as the same player, not at the same place, not even the same way anybody would have predicted, and it's right there where we misunderstand Ronaldinho's entire career. We usually tell it as a tragedy, the player who should have stayed at the top longer, the genius who could have been even greater, and perhaps some of it may even be fair. His peak was shorter than Messi's, it was shorter than Cristiano Ronaldo's, and there are reasonable questions about whether his career could have been different, but longevity is not the only way of measuring a journey, because Ronaldinho's greatest gift was never efficiency, it was freedom. He played football like the pitch was somewhere he had to escape to. The smile mattered, the tricks mattered, the unnecessary passes, it mattered, and perhaps a player who was built around that kind of freedom was never going to have the same story as athletes built around control. At Atlético Mineiro, he didn't recover his 2005 body. He didn't become 25 years old again. He had found something else. He now belonged. Atletico's own history remembers him as a decisive part in that Libertadores run, and in 2013 alone, the club credits him with 4 goals and 7 assists in the competition. And many years later, Ronaldinho himself said that returning to Belo Horizonte brought emotional memories that he was proud to be part of that family. That is why Belo Horizonte works as his Ithaca, not because it is where Ronaldinho was born, it wasn't. For you see, home in this story is not geographical, it's a place where the wandering stops meaning failure. Now Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca after losing almost everything that he began with in this journey. He does not return as the same man who left, and that's exactly the point. The homecoming is not a time travel. You don't get your old self back. You arrive as whatever the journey has made you. You see, Ronaldinho didn't become peak Ronaldinho again because he didn't need to. The player who arrived at Belo Horizonte had already been the world champion, a Ballon d'Or winner, and the king of Barcelona. He had been injured, moved aside, and slowly turned into a nostalgia act while still playing football. And then one last time, football gave him a great journey. The quarterfinals rescued at the death. Semi-finals recovered from 2 goals down, and a final recovered also from 2 goals down. At the end of it, the Copa Libertadores. Odysseus had Ithaca. Ronaldinho had Belo Horizonte. Now, Ronaldinho's career is often remembered for how quickly the sun seemed to set. But maybe that is why Odysseus is a better comparison than a story such as Icarus. Icarus only falls, whilst Odysseus, he returns. He wins, he wanders, he loses his way, and eventually he finds his way home. Ronaldinho had already conquered football before most players had reached their prime. His body changed, his place in the game changed, and for a while it looked as though the story had simply drifted too far away from him. But the final lesson of the Odyssey is that getting lost doesn't make the journey meaningless, that sometimes the long way home is a reason the return actually matters. Ronaldinho didn't end his greatest final chapter becoming the best player in the world again. He ended it by becoming Ronaldinho again. Not the same version that Barcelona remembered, not a version that Europe expected, the version that could still smile, still create, still matter, still lead a team somewhere it had never been before. And sometimes the final chapter is not about returning to who you were, it is about discovering where you still belong.